The alert came at 3:47 a.m. Not a breach alarm, something worse. The chime that means a flagged threat is at your gate. I grabbed the monitor. 3 figures in the rain faces glowing green under infrared. My mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, after 2 years of running, after erasing my name, my number, my entire existence. They had found me. Marcus rattled the gate like a caged animal. Brenda sobbed into her hands. Eleanor stared straight into the camera with those eyes. The eyes that said I owed her everything. The eyes that had already taken $62,300 and almost taken my sanity. If you have ever been your family's ATM, if you have ever been the only number they call when they need money, if you have ever had to disappear just to survive, hit that like button right now. Subscribe, because what happens next will shock you. Comment and tell me if I went too far or not far enough, because what I did at that gate that night changed everything forever. Now let me take you back to where this all started, 2 years and 4 months before that rainy night in Marin Ridge, California. My name is Alyssa Vance. At least that is what it says on my driver's license now. I am 34 years old and I design security systems for a living, not the cheap ones from big box stores. I build fortresses for people with real enemies. Corporate executives with death threats, federal witnesses, women running from violent partners. I find every weakness in their lives and seal it shut. My company, Fortress Solutions, has a 98% client satisfaction rate. The other 2%, they ignored my protocols and paid the price. I learned my trade the hard way, not from some boot camp or military unit. I learned it from my family. If you want to defend against predators, you first have to survive them. Cedar Heights, Ohio. Small town, big church, everyone in everyone's business. My father David ran a bakery on Main Street. Nothing fancy, bread and pastries. But it was his dream. He gave free donuts to kids who forgot lunch money. My mother Eleanor was different. She married him expecting more. When that did not happen, she made me her retirement plan. I was good at math. Really good. By 16, I had taught myself coding. By 18, full scholarship for computer science. My mother told everyone I would be a doctor. When I chose cybersecurity instead, she cried for 3 days. Not from sadness. She was calculating the income difference between a surgeon and a security engineer. My sister Brenda was 2 years younger and my opposite. Artistic, emotional, dramatic. Painter, then musician, then poet. Talented at none of it. Eleanor funded every expensive whim anyway. Art supplies, music lessons, a semester at arts college that cost more than my entire 4-year scholarship. When Brenda dropped out after 4 months, Eleanor just asked if I could help with the student loan payments. 22 years old, my first check home, $300 for the mortgage. My mother cried and said I had saved them. I felt like a hero for 6 months, until the next check was due, and the next, and the next. By 25, I was sending $800 monthly. My mother said it was temporary. It never was. Then Brenda met Marcus Thorne at a gallery opening. Financial advisor, impeccably dressed, the kind of smile that made you want to sign things. He was 38. She was 26. Eleanor loved him instantly. He had money, or looked like it. 6 months later, they married. I paid for the wedding. $7,000. Eleanor called it my gift to the family. I said yes because I always said yes. After the wedding, things accelerated. Marcus moved into my parents' house while they looked for their own place. That search took 2 years. During that time, Marcus started talking to me about family wealth management. I was being irresponsible with my money, he said, not maximizing tax benefits. He offered to set up a trust for my father with me as primary contributor. He made it sound brilliant. I almost signed, but I am a security engineer. I find vulnerabilities. Something in those trust documents did not add up. A clause giving Marcus power of attorney if my father became incapacitated. I asked a lawyer friend to review it. She told me to run. The trust was designed to give Marcus control over any money I contributed. Zero requirement that it actually reach my father. It was a trap. I did not sign. Marcus was disappointed. My mother, too. Brenda did not speak to me for 3 months. They said I did not trust family. They were right. But I kept sending money because I was the successful one. Because they needed me. Because some part of me believed that if I gave enough, they would finally see me as more than an ATM. The first real warning came on a Sunday evening in late spring, my father's birthday. I drove home to Cedar Heights. After dinner, I stepped out to the back porch. The kitchen window was open. My mother and sister were talking inside. They did not know I was there. Brenda was worried about a balloon payment, $20,000 due on Marcus's investment property. She asked my mother how they would cover it. My mother's response was calm, almost casual. They would use Dad's medical emergency excuse again. Tell Alyssa he needed a procedure. Send fake medical bills. I had already fallen for it twice that year. Once for his knee, once for his heart. $6,000 total. There had been no procedures. I sat on those porch steps listening to my mother and sister plot how to extract more money using my love for my father as leverage. I did not go back inside. I got in my car, drove back to Columbus. Did not sleep. Just stared at my bank statements adding up every transfer, every check, every lie. $34,000 in 3 years. The next morning, I started keeping records. Every text, every call, every email begging for money. I created a spreadsheet tracking every dollar and what they claimed it was for. I was not planning anything yet. I just needed to see it in data. Data does not lie. People do. 2 months later, Marcus made his move. Coffee shop meeting. He wanted to talk about my future. His proposal was simple. If I voluntarily surrendered any claim to my inheritance, he would ensure I was taken care of informally when my parents passed. More than my fair share outside of probate. Smart estate planning, he said. Tax efficient. I asked him to send the documents for review. He said no. Better to handle it in person. Keep it simple. No lawyers, no fuss. Just family. I told him I would think about it. That was when he got angry. I was always making things complicated. I thought I was smarter than everyone just because I worked with computers. Brenda was starting to think I did not care about the family at all. I did not respond. I just watched him, really saw him for the first time. The expensive watch he could not afford. The suit just a little too flashy. The smile that never reached his eyes. He was a con artist. He had married into my family for access to the one person with stable income. Me. That night, I changed every password. Enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. Checked my credit report. Someone had tried to open a credit card in my name 6 months earlier. Application denied due to address mismatch, but it had been submitted from my parents' house. I was done waiting for the next blow. I started planning. Then came the GoFundMe. September. A distant cousin sent me a link. Had I seen my mother's fundraiser, I had not. The page was titled Eleanor's Brave Battle. Raising money for treatment of a rare neurological condition. Photos of my mother looking frail. Updates from Brenda about doctor visits and treatment costs. $50,000 goal. $19,000 already raised. I felt like I had been punched, not because my mother was sick, because she was not. I called her doctor's office, said I was coordinating care for her next neurology appointment. The receptionist was confused. My mother had only been in for routine checkups. No neurologist, no specialist referrals, no rare condition. I sat in my apartment and read through every word of that GoFundMe, every update, every comment from people sending money, every lie wrapped in tragedy. This was not desperation, not a mistake. This was fraud. My mother, my sister, and Marcus were running it together. I did not confront them. Not yet. I downloaded everything. Screenshots, donor information, every update with timestamps. Created a folder on an encrypted drive, labeled it evidence because that is exactly what it was. The final blow came in November. I was at work when Sarah Chin called, the lawyer I had consulted about estate planning years ago. She needed to speak urgently about a document sent to her office by a title company. Someone had used my digital signature to authorize a home equity line of credit against my father's house. $150,000. The signature was mine, but I had never signed it. Sarah sent the documents. The signature was perfect, matched my legal signature exactly, but I had not signed it. Someone had forged it using my medical power of attorney form from 3 years ago when my father had a health scare. I had signed that form in good faith. Someone scanned it, extracted my signature, pasted it onto a bank document. The loan was approved. Money disbursed, Marcus's name on the account as co-borrower. My father's bakery property listed as collateral. I hung up. Did not cry, did not scream. I walked out of my office, got in my car, and drove. Did not know where. Just drove west, away from Ohio, away from my family, away from the person I had been who let this happen. I stopped at a motel in Indiana, sat on the bed, made a list. Not of what they had done to me, of what I was going to do next. I was not the victim anymore. I was a security architect, and I had just identified the most critical vulnerability in my life: my family. First, I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. Then I called my bank and changed every account number. I filed a police report for identity theft in the county where the forged loan had been processed. I hired Sarah Chin to represent me in a civil fraud case. I sent a cease and desist letter to GoFundMe with copies of my mother's medical records proving she was not sick. The fundraiser was frozen within 48 hours. Then I started erasing myself. I closed my social media accounts. I changed my phone number. I set up a mail forwarding service that stripped my physical address from anything being sent to me. I quit my job in Columbus and accepted a position with a security firm in San Francisco that let me work remotely from anywhere. I bought a piece of land in Marin Ridge, California, an unincorporated area with strict privacy laws and no close neighbors. I designed a house, not a home, a fortress. Every window was reinforced glass. Every door was steel core with biometric locks. The perimeter was monitored by thermal cameras and ground sensors that could detect footsteps from 50 yards away. I installed a panic room with its own ventilation system and a direct line to a private security firm. The driveway had retractable bollards that could stop a truck. I called it Sentinel North, not because it was my home, but because it was my first line of defense. Before I left Ohio completely, I did one last thing. I invited my father to visit me in Chicago, where I said I was temporarily staying before my move west. I told him I wanted to have dinner before I relocated for work. He came alone. My mother had not wanted to make the trip. At dinner, I did not eat. I put a folder on the table and I slid it across to him. Inside were bank records, screenshots, the forged loan documents, the GoFundMe evidence, and a timeline of every fraudulent request for money over the past 3 years. I also included the police report number. My father opened the folder. His hands shook as he read. He kept looking up at me like he wanted me to tell him it was fake. I did not. I just sat there and watched him realize that his wife and daughter and son-in-law had been committing crimes in his name. He tried to defend them at first. He said Eleanor would never do this. He said there must be a misunderstanding. Then I showed him the audio recording I had made of my mother and Brenda on the back porch discussing how to manipulate me. I had been wearing a recording device that day. I had kept the file just in case I ever needed it. Today was that day. My father put his face in his hands. He did not cry out loud. He just made this soft, broken sound like something inside him had cracked. When he looked up, his eyes were different, older, defeated. I told him I was not asking him to choose between me and them. I was telling him that I was done. I was leaving. I was changing my name. I was cutting all contact, but I was offering him one thing, a way out. Sarah had helped me set up a trust fund. The trust owned the bakery property, taking it out of my father's name and protecting it from any liens or claims, including the fraudulent mortgage. The trust would pay my father a salary to manage the bakery. He would have housing in a small apartment above the shop. He would be financially independent from my mother for the first time in 30 years. But he had to agree to separate his finances completely. New bank account, no joint assets, no access for Eleanor or Brenda or Marcus. He asked me if this meant he had to divorce my mother. I told him that was his choice. I was just offering him a way to survive what was coming. Because I was pressing charges. I was suing for fraud. I was making sure that everyone who had used my identity or stolen from me faced consequences. And if he was still financially entangled with them, he would go down too. He signed the trust documents that night. I had a notary waiting in the hotel lobby. When it was done, my father hugged me. He whispered that he was sorry. He said he had known something was wrong, but he had been too afraid to see it. I told him I forgave him. I did not know if that was true, but I said it anyway, because he was the only one in my family who had never actively tried to hurt me. He had just been too weak to stop it. I left Chicago the next day. I drove west and I did not look back. Sentinel North took 4 months to build. While it was being constructed, I lived in a corporate apartment in San Francisco and ran my business remotely. Fortress Solutions was thriving. Turns out, when you build security systems with the mindset of someone who has actually been hunted, your designs are better. I hired a former Special Forces operator named Jax to consult on physical security. He had the kind of resume that made people nervous. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, specialization in asset protection, and close quarters combat. He took one look at my blueprints and said I was building a bunker, not a house. I said that was the point. Jax upgraded everything. He added hydraulic bollards at the entrance that could rise from the ground in 2 seconds. He installed a secondary perimeter with motion-activated lights that could output 80,000 lumens, enough to blind anyone approaching. He rigged the entire property with overlapping camera coverage, including infrared and facial recognition. We built a server room that ran the whole system on independent power with battery backup and a diesel generator. If the grid went down, Sentinel North would keep running. The house became operational in March. I moved in and I activated what I called the 30-day test. I had not heard from my mother, my sister, or Marcus since I had filed the police reports and the civil suit. No apologies, no explanations, just silence. I wanted to see if anyone would reach out just to check if I was okay. Not for money, just because they cared. 30 days passed. My phone never rang, not once. On day 31, I deleted their contact information from my phone. I uploaded their photos, voice prints, and biographical data into the security system under a category I labeled Threat Profiles Alpha. From that point forward, if any of them came within 500 yards of my property, the system would alert me, record everything, and automatically log the data for my lawyer. They were not my family anymore. They were targets in a database. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. In June, Brenda started posting on social media. She did not name me directly, but the message was clear. Cryptic posts about how success changes people, how families should stick together, how some people forget where they came from when they get a little money. Her friends commented with sympathy. They called me ungrateful without knowing my name. Then, a local podcast in Cedar Heights did an episode about fractured families in small-town America. Someone had reached out to them with a story. The podcast did not name names, but they described a situation that was very clearly mine. A daughter who had abandoned her ailing mother and struggling family to move to California and build a tech company. They painted me as a villain. I listened to the entire episode twice. I made notes on every false claim. Then I had Sarah draft what we called the truth package. It was a 10-page document with exhibits. My mother's actual medical records showing she had no neurological condition. The GoFundMe evidence with bank records showing where the money went. The forged loan documents with forensic analysis proving the signature was fabricated. The police report numbers for identity theft and fraud. The audio recording of my mother and sister planning to manipulate me. The timeline of every dollar they had taken. Sarah sent the truth package to the podcast producer, the parent company, and their legal department with a polite note explaining that they had been given false information and had defamed me on air. She requested an immediate retraction and public apology. If they did not comply within 72 hours, we would file suit for defamation. The podcast episode disappeared from their feed within 24 hours. They issued a public apology saying they had been misled by a source and had not properly verified the story. They did not name Brenda, but she knew. And now she knew that I was not just hiding. I was armed with truth, and I would deploy it. Marcus tried next. He sent me an email through an address he must have gotten from an old contact we shared. The subject line was, "We need to talk about reconciliation." The email was carefully worded. He acknowledged that things had gotten out of hand. He said that everyone had made mistakes, including me. He suggested that we could all move forward if I was willing to be reasonable. He said he wanted to help restore my reputation in Cedar Heights. He made it sound like he was doing me a favor. I did not respond. Sarah responded with the case number for the fraud charges and a note that any further contact should be directed through her office. 3 weeks later, Marcus lost his job. I did not cause it directly, but I may have set it in motion. When I had frozen my credit, it triggered an automatic investigation into the fraudulent loan. That investigation flagged Marcus's role. His employer, a financial services firm, conducted an internal review. They found irregularities in his client accounts, not illegal, but questionable. The kind of creative accounting that works until someone looks closely. They fired him to avoid liability. Brenda called it a witch hunt. She posted online about how the system was rigged against honest people trying to get ahead. She did not mention the fraud. She never mentioned what they had actually done. By July, their financial situation had collapsed. The fraudulent mortgage I had reported was voided by the bank, but the damage was done. Marcus and Brenda's house, which they had been using as collateral for other loans, was foreclosed. They moved in with my mother. Eleanor was facing criminal charges for the GoFundMe fraud and had to repay the $19,000 that had been donated. Her bank account went negative. The church she attended, where she had been a prominent member, quietly asked her to step down from her volunteer positions. The rumor mill in Cedar Heights was not kind to people who faked cancer for money. My father called me in August. He said things at home were bad. Brenda and Eleanor and Marcus were fighting constantly, blaming each other, blaming me. Marcus had become desperate trying to track me down through old friends and colleagues. My father wanted to know if I was safe. I told him I was. I asked if the bakery was okay. He said it was better than okay. For the first time in years, he was making enough to actually save money. The trust was working. He was free. I was happy for him, and I was waiting, because I knew they would come eventually. People like my mother, my sister Marcus, they do not give up. They adapt, and I wanted to be ready when they did. The attack came in September. Marcus had hired a private investigator paid for with the last of the GoFundMe money before it was frozen. The investigator was good. He found an old Wi-Fi login I had used at a coffee shop in Marin Ridge. I had gotten careless for exactly 4 minutes using an old email address to log into a public network. That was enough. The investigator sold Marcus a data report with my approximate location. They sold Marcus's remaining luxury car and rented a cheap sedan. Then they drove from Ohio to California. 2 days non-stop. They arrived in Marin Ridge with nothing but desperation and a vague area to search. It took them 3 days of driving around before Marcus spotted something, a private road with a heavy gate and high walls. No name, no mailbox. Just a camera dome and a sensor array. Marcus was in finance. He knew money when he saw it. He bet everything they had left that I was behind that gate. He was right. My perimeter system detected their vehicle at 11:43 p.m. on a Wednesday night. The sedan was circling the area, slowly stopping at each private road. When it paused outside my gate for more than 30 seconds, the system flagged it as suspicious. When the license plate scan came back as a rental vehicle from out of state, the system elevated the threat level. When the facial recognition software identified Marcus in the driver's seat, the system woke me up. I was not at Sentinel North that night. I was never at Sentinel North at night. I had a second property, a small condo in a high-rise 20 miles away in a different county. That was where I actually lived. Sentinel North was bait, a fortress designed not to keep me safe, but to lure in anyone who came looking for me. Every system in that house was designed to record, document, and gather evidence. It was not a home. It was a trap. But I had not expected them to find it so soon. I watched on my laptop as the sedan drove away, then returned an hour later, then left again. They were confirming the location, planning their approach. I called Jax. He was at Sentinel North in 20 minutes, armed and ready. I called Sarah. She was awake reviewing case files. I told her it was happening. She said she was ready. Then I waited. They came back at 3:47 a.m. It was raining. They parked 50 yards from the gate and walked up the drive. My mother was in the center, flanked by Brenda and Marcus. They looked destroyed, wet, exhausted, desperate. Marcus was shaking the gate, trying to see if it would open. Brenda was crying. Eleanor was staring into the camera with that look I knew too well. The look that said I owed her. I activated the exterior lights. 80,000 lumens of LED power concentrated directly on them. They threw their hands up, blinded. I could see everything on the thermal cameras. Their body heat, their elevated heart rates, their panic. I activated the external speaker system. My voice echoed across the property, amplified and emotionless. This is private property under electronic surveillance. You are trespassing. All audio and video are being recorded and will be provided to law enforcement. State your purpose." Eleanor tried to step forward, shielding her eyes. She called out for me. "Alyssa, baby, please, we just want to talk. We have driven so far. We have lost everything. We need you." I replied through the speakers. "I did not ask who you are. I asked what your purpose is. You are here for money. Start with that." Marcus tried to take over. His voice was shaking, but he was trying to sound reasonable. "Alyssa, this has gotten out of control. We made mistakes. Everyone made mistakes. But we are family. We can fix this. We just need to talk face to face." I cut him off. "This is your final warning. State your purpose clearly or leave the property. Law enforcement will be contacted if you do not comply." Brenda broke down then. She screamed my name. She begged. She said I was destroying them. She said I was cruel. She said she was sorry. She said they all were. She said they would do anything. I let her scream. I let all of them stand there in the rain under those blinding lights while I listed every single thing they had done. The GoFundMe fraud, the forged mortgage, the years of financial exploitation, the podcast lies, the manipulation, every crime, every lie, every betrayal. When I finished, there was silence except for the rain and Brenda's sobbing. Then I gave them one chance. "If you want me to consider opening this gate, you will confess. Each of you. State your name. State what you did. No excuses, no justifications, only the truth." They did not want to. I could see Marcus hesitating, calculating. But they were cornered. They had no money, no plan, no options. They had gambled everything on finding me, and I was right here, but I was behind a wall they could not cross. Marcus went first. His voice was barely audible. "My name is Marcus Thorne. I forged Alyssa's signature on a home equity loan. I used the money to pay off personal debts. I committed fraud." Brenda was next, choking on her tears. "My name is Brenda Vance. I helped run a fake GoFundMe saying my mother was sick when she was not. I lied to people to get money. I committed fraud." Eleanor was last. She tried to soften it at first. She said things had been hard. She said they had been desperate. I cut the speaker and waited. She understood. When I turned it back on, she started again. Her voice was hollow. "My name is Eleanor Vance. I lied about having a neurological condition to raise money. I took money from my daughter for years under false pretenses. I manipulated her. I committed fraud. I recorded every word. High-definition video. Crystal clear audio. Their confessions given freely under duress but without coercion. They chose to speak. They chose to confess. I just gave them the stage. Then I told them the truth. The truth they needed to hear but would never accept. You do not need me. You need someone to pay for your choices. You need someone to absorb your consequences. You need an ATM and a scapegoat and a shield. I am not that person anymore. I am not your daughter. I am not your sister. I am not your family. I am the person you tried to exploit, and I am the person who said no. Leave my property. Do not come back. If I see any of you within 500 yards of me ever again, I will have you arrested." I called the private security firm that patrolled the area. They arrived in 8 minutes. Marcus, Brenda, and Eleanor ran to their car when they saw the headlights approaching. They peeled out tires, slipping on the wet road. The security team escorted them to the county line and took photos of their license plate. I sent those photos to Sarah along with the video of the confessions. The next morning, Sarah filed an amended civil complaint. She attached the confession video as evidence. She increased the damages we were seeking to include emotional distress, defamation, and punitive damages. She also sent the video to the prosecutor handling the criminal case against Eleanor. That video was the final piece they needed. Eleanor was formally charged with wire fraud and theft by deception. Brenda was named as an accomplice. Marcus tried to negotiate. He offered to testify against Eleanor and Brenda in exchange for leniency. Sarah told him we would consider his cooperation but made no promises. She wanted him to sweat. Then I did something they did not expect. I bought their debt. When the bank had foreclosed on Marcus and Brenda's house, they had tried to sell the mortgage to a collection agency. I had Sarah set up a shell company. We bought the mortgage for 80 cents on the dollar. Legally, Marcus and Brenda now owed money to a trust controlled by my father. When they defaulted, which they did immediately, the trust foreclosed. They lost the house. Eleanor lost the house too, since she had been living there. But here is the part they did not see coming. I sold that property to a real estate development company with one condition. They had to offer my father a 15-year lease for his bakery at below market rates in the new luxury complex they were building. My father got a state-of-the-art bakery space in a prime location secured for more than a decade. Marcus, Brenda, and Eleanor lost everything and had nowhere to go. That should have been the end, but Brenda made one last desperate play. In October, she organized what she called a family intervention rally in front of the Cedar Heights Town Hall. She invited local news, the church, anyone who would listen. She framed it as a public act of forgiveness. She said the family wanted to publicly apologize to me and ask me to forgive them so they could heal together. It was a PR stunt, a last-ditch attempt to manipulate public opinion and pressure me into giving them money. I was not planning to attend. Sarah advised against it. But then my father called. He said Marcus had told him that if I did not show up and publicly reconcile, they would go to national media. They would tell their version of the story, the version where I was a vindictive tech millionaire who destroyed a struggling family out of spite. I hung up and I thought about it for exactly 5 minutes. Then I booked a flight. I arrived in Cedar Heights the morning of the rally. Sarah flew in with me. So did Jax. We rented a black SUV and drove to the town hall. There was a small crowd, maybe 50 people, local news cameras, Brenda standing on the steps with a microphone looking frail and sad, Eleanor beside her playing the role of the suffering mother, Marcus in the back trying to look remorseful. I walked up to the microphone. I had my own portable speaker system. Jax set it up on the hood of the SUV. When Brenda saw me, she started crying and opened her arms like she wanted to hug me. I did not move. I plugged my laptop into the speaker system. Then I played the video, the full confession from the gate. Marcus admitting to forgery, Brenda admitting to GoFundMe fraud, Eleanor admitting to years of manipulation. Their voices echoed across the town hall plaza. Everyone heard. The news cameras recorded it all. When the video ended, there was complete silence. Brenda looked like she was going to be sick. Eleanor was frozen. Marcus was staring at the ground. I took the microphone. I did not yell, I did not cry. I just spoke calmly and clearly. My name is Alyssa Vance. These people are my biological family. For 7 years, they exploited me financially and emotionally. They stole my identity. They forged my signature. They lied about medical emergencies. They ran a fraudulent fundraiser. They attempted to manipulate me through public pressure and private guilt. I have documented every crime. I have pressed charges. I have sued them in civil court, and I am here today to make one final offer. I pulled out a document. It was a settlement agreement. Sarah had drafted it. The terms were simple. They would repay every dollar they had taken from me plus interest. They would agree to a permanent restraining order. They would never use my name in public again. And they would sign a confession that would be held by Sarah's office ready to be released to law enforcement if they ever violated the agreement. I placed the document on a folding table that Jack set up. I put a pen beside it. I said they could sign it right now in front of everyone, or they could take their chances in court. But this was the only offer they would get, and it expired when I left Cedar Heights. Marcus stepped forward first. He looked at the document like it was a trap. It was not. It was just the truth written down. He signed. Brenda signed next, her hand shaking. Eleanor was last. She looked at me with something I had never seen before. Not manipulation, not guilt, just exhaustion. She signed. A notary public stepped forward. I had hired her to be there. She notarized each signature. It was done. I looked at my mother. I did not call her Mom. I called her by her first name. Eleanor, I said, I do not hate you. I just stopped paying for you. Goodbye. I got in the SUV and we drove away. Behind me, I could hear Brenda screaming my name. I did not look back. I flew back to California that night. My phone was off. I did not check it until I landed. When I did, there was a notification from the Sentinel North security system. Perimeter ping. Unidentified vehicle. I pulled up the camera feed. It was not my family. It was a sedan with rental plates parked just outside the camera range. The driver was watching the house. It took me 10 seconds to realize what had happened. Marcus had hired a private investigator before he lost everything. That investigator had found Sentinel North and had been watching it, waiting for the right moment to approach. He had seen the confrontation at the gate. He had recorded it. I called Sarah immediately. She contacted law enforcement. The investigator was arrested for violating the restraining order on behalf of his client. His license was suspended. Marcus faced additional charges for conspiracy to harass. But more importantly, I realized something. Sentinel North had done its job. It was never meant to be my home. It was meant to be the place where threats revealed themselves. It was meant to be the location where I could control the narrative, gather evidence, and let my enemies make mistakes. Because when you are a security architect, you do not just build walls. You build traps. You design systems that make your enemies think they are winning right up until the moment they lose. I sat in my real home that night, my anonymous condo with no cameras, no sensors, no walls, just a normal apartment in a normal building with normal people. I looked out at the city lights and I felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. Not because the threat was gone. Threats never really go away. But because I had won. My father called me 2 weeks later. He told me the bakery was doing better than ever. He had hired 2 new employees. He was making specialty breads that were selling out every day. He said he felt young again. He said he was sorry it took him so long to see the truth. I told him it was okay. I told him I was proud of him. Eleanor, Brenda, and Marcus were gone. They had moved to another state trying to rebuild. The criminal charges against Eleanor were resolved with a plea deal. She got probation, community service, and mandatory restitution. Brenda avoided charges by cooperating. Marcus lost his financial licenses permanently. They were broken. Not because I destroyed them, but because I stopped letting them feed off me. I went back to Sentinel North one last time. I walked through the empty rooms. I looked at the cameras, the sensors, the reinforced doors. I thought about the woman who had built this place. She had been so afraid, so angry, so determined never to be hurt again. She had built a fortress because she did not know how else to survive. But I was not that woman anymore. I did not need a fortress. I just needed boundaries, and I had learned how to enforce them. I deactivated Sentinel North. I put it on the market. It sold in 3 days to a tech executive who loved the security features. I took the money and I donated half to a nonprofit that helps victims of financial abuse. The other half I put into a fund for my father's bakery, ensuring he would always have stability. Then I went back to my real home and I lived my life. I built security systems for other people. I helped them protect what mattered, and I never looked back. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. And sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go of the people who are drowning you. The fortress I built was not made of steel and stone. It was made of data evidence and the refusal to be anyone's victim. And that fortress stands forever even after the walls come down. So I want to ask you, have you ever had to cut off someone you loved to save yourself? Have you ever been the bad guy in someone else's story because you refused to be their ATM? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that like button if you think setting boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. And subscribe because I have more stories about what happens when you stop letting people walk all over you. This is not about revenge. This is about freedom, and freedom is worth fighting for.